Regulating STOs for the masses. The SEC has allowed a venture to raise $50 million from a public security sale following the Blockstack filing. Let's delve into how Reg A+STOs are now a reality. Gordon Einstein, CryptoLaw Partners.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, just to be real clear, the SEC is, quote unquote, about to authorize the first Reg A blockchain and crypto offering, and I'll be going over that. So, here's a quick question. Who thinks that there has ever been a compliant public offering of security tokens in the United States? Raise your hand if you think that's true. Okay. Who thinks that all tokens by definition are securities in the United States, according to the SEC? Some brave souls are raising their hands. I like that. Who's not going to raise their hands no matter what I say? Fantastic. I love Malta. Okay, so this is a 3, 4, 5, 10-hour presentation I'm stuffing down into 10 minutes. I am more than happy to share this deck. Just add me on LinkedIn or Facebook or the Woovit app, and I'll post it on everywhere. And look, I already blew a minute. Here we go. Okay, so Blockstack, brave souls that they are, after having raised privately several tens of millions of dollars, has filed with the SEC for permission to conduct a public offering of security tokens. And they've just amended their filing, and it appears they've done a good job, and it looks like the SEC is about to approve their offering. Once that happens, this will be the first public offering of securities in the US that's done on a compliant basis that the SEC has signed off on. So, and again, I'm gonna move fast because 10 minutes. Keep in mind, this presentation is a little bit speculative and creative just because this has not received final approval yet. But if you follow along, you'll be ahead of the curve on the developments happening in the US. And of course, I'm an attorney who's licensed in the United States, and I keep on having the same conversation with people where they seem to be trying to avoid the United States out of what I call FUD. FUD, as most of you know, stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. People have FUD about raising money from US investors and engaging US customers because of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, mostly related to our securities laws and the actions of the Securities and Exchange Commission. But who knows what the opposite of FUD is? It's on the screen. FOMO. FOMO, that's right, fear of missing out. It's what we all feel when we go to Instagram and see the fabulous lives everyone else is having other than us, okay? You don't want to have ICO or IEO FOMO and have those other people raising funds in the US, and you could have done it if only you had understood a little bit more of the law. So I am going to help you overcome the FUD so that you don't get FOMO. Okay, now, this is a 3-semester law on securities crunched down into 2 minutes. Okay, I paid $80,000 to USC Law School to get this information, and it's free for you. You're welcome. Okay. Why is everyone freaked out by the United States? What's our freaking problem? Well, here's problem number 1. We have a very expansive definition of the term security. The last speaker talked about 4 nice categories, and only one of them is an investment instrument. Well, in the US, theoretically, everything is a security. A table, a dog, gold, everything. At least that's what the SEC appeared to think. So the SEC claimed this overarching jurisdiction where they wouldn't tell you what was a security, what wasn't, but you better be careful and treat it like a security no matter what. That's been dialed back, and I'll talk about that in a second. So if everything is a security, what do you need to do if you're offering securities to the public in the US? Well, the default rule is you need to register that offering with the SEC before you offer to sell or sell the securities. And registering a complete offering with the SEC is expensive, it's complex, it's time-consuming. It's normally associated with what's called an initial public offering, IPO. I'm sure most of you know that term. So registered offerings, when they're done to the general public for the first time, have traditionally been IPOs, initial public offerings. And of course, there's benefits to doing an IPO. You know, everyone used to dream of doing an IPO. Like, one day I'm gonna start a company in my garage, and then 2 years later I'll IPO it. Well, it's a great idea, but IPOs have become rarer over time because it's been harder and harder to do an IPO, but we'll get into that. Okay, here's the second semester securities regulation covered in 30 seconds or less. When you register your public offering in the United States, not only is the actual registration process long, expensive, complex, all that other fun stuff, and not only do you need the SEC to approve or make effective that offer before you can carry it out, registering a public offering in the US results then in your company being publicly traded or being in what's called an SEC reporting company, meaning the joy doesn't stop with that first registration. Oh no, it's like the relationship that just keeps on going because you have to keep on filing reports with the SEC. You have to keep on being in compliance. Yearly reports, quarterly reports, special action reports, and if you mess up, you get all kinds of lawsuits. It's lots of fun stuff. So there's two ways that you can become a publicly traded company in the US. You can either register your initial offering, your IPO, or here's the fun part. Suppose you're really careful and you don't sell in the US and you limit the number of people you're selling to. Well, if secondary market trading, in other words, trading after your initial sale, if your security gets into the hands of enough US investors, guess what? The SEC will say, well, fine, you didn't offer your securities to the public, but enough of the public owns them now that we're going to treat you like a reporting company, like a publicly traded company. So all these companies that are doing ICOs and IEOs outside the US, once those tokens get into enough American hands, they can't theoretically be a reporting company under the SEC rules, even if they avoided the US in the first place. That's fun. That's a result of secondary market trading. Okay, so of course, US securities law only applies to securities, and thus only to security tokens. Not the US definition, but the rational definition of a security token is a token that's like a traditional investment type, say stock or bond, or that represents some sort of economic or profit interest in the issuer or the underlying platform. That seems relatively straightforward. A utility token, not counting like currency tokens, is best thought of as a token that allows access to a blockchain-based software platform. You can even imagine, say, tokenized access to Office 365 if Office 365 was blockchain-based, or Google Apps if Google Apps was blockchain-based. So we have this theoretical divide between security tokens and utility tokens. And theoretically, you should only have to register offerings of security tokens, not utility tokens. But the SEC used to say that every token was a security token. So how do people traditionally, in quotes, if they're doing a sale of tokens, avoid the United States, or avoid registration, rather? Well, the first traditional technique is to only sell utility tokens. Well, if the SEC thinks every token is a security token and there is no such thing as a utility token, how do you do that? Raise your hand if you have the answer. Because if you have the answer, I'll buy it from you. Okay. Number two is people think, I will use an offshore platform to do an ICO or IEO. That platform will pretend to not accept US investment. I'm sure I'm safe now. And then technique number three, which is actually pretty valid, is there's ways of getting money from US investors, and you have to do this. It's fantastic. Without doing a full public offering, without registering your offering. It's called using an exemption. And the most popular available exemption in the US is Regulation D. D stands for awesome. No, it doesn't really, but just Regulation D. All right. Regulation D is, I'll get into the details, but it's small sales, a limited group. It's not a public offering, it's a very private offering, and there's a safe harbor, is a term, for offerings like that in the US where you don't need to register it. So these are the three typical ways of avoiding registering in the US. Reg A+ either makes these much easier to use or adds to them, and that's a little preview. And here we go with 1 minute to go. Okay, now here's the news flash I want everyone to get in their minds. The SEC has dialed back its position on security tokens. Okay, it used to claim, Jay Clayton, the chairman, said, I've never seen an ICO that did not involve a public offering of securities, or some words to that effect, which is clearly a lie. But the US is under pressure now. So the US, the SEC, has dialed back its position. They've now issued a no action letter and also an interpretive release indicating that not all tokens are security tokens, that there is such a thing as a utility token in the US, which my official response was, duh, but it took them a while to catch up. All right, so there's now this theoretical world where we don't need to register every token in the US. That's nice. So we know what a utility token is. It's basically saying that's not a security token. It's saying that allows tokenized access to a platform. Here's another takeaway that I want to drill into their mind. The traditional ICO model is someone has a great idea for a platform, but it's not built yet. They sell their tokens. They're not yet working tokens to the public. They get Bitcoin or fiat in exchange for those tokens, and they use the proceeds to build their platform. And then those tokens later, once that platform is built, become functional, right? That's the traditional ICO model. That's what Ethereum did, right? Vitalik had an idea for a platform. It didn't just spring fully formed from his mind, as smart as he is, right? So he raised money, built Ethereum, and then the Ether became functional. Well, guess what? Ethereum conducted a public offering of securities when they did their initial ICO. Okay, Ethereum was a security. What's amazing, and the SEC has said this, is that even though Ethereum started off as a security, because the network evolved and became functional and decentralized, Ethereum is no longer a security. Exactly. Who's ever heard of the SEC or any other regulator saying, yes, magically what you have, AT&T stock is no longer a security because something happened to the AT&T network? That's never happened before in the history of securities law. That's awesome. Yep. You're feeling me, aren't you? All right, I like this. Who wants lunch? Wait 5 minutes. Okay, so that, technique number one to avoid registration, issue a utility token. Or being sure that it's fully functional, because if it's not fully functional, if it's pre-functional, I did make this perfectly clear. Oh, give me a second. Oh, yeah. I ain't gonna jump ahead. So Reg A+ lets you raise $50 million from the US every 12 months. You can sell these tokens to anyone, not just accredited investors. You can use Reg A+ to take your private exempt offerings, offer them to the public, and stop the tokens from being restricted. And guys, this last slide is worth $100 million. Remember I talked about public companies and that you have this ongoing reporting requirement? Remember the idea of a pre-functional token becoming a functional and no longer security? Well, what if you use A+ to conduct your ICO, right? You're not violating the law even though they're pre-functional because you're treating it like a security. You're doing your public issuance. Well, yes, then you're public, then you have to do reporting ongoing under A+. But suppose you finish building your platform and those tokens you issued that were initially securities aren't securities and they evolve so they're utility tokens. Well, here's the Jedi move. Then you petition the SEC and you say, guess what? I no longer have any security tokens in circulation. They're all utility tokens now. I petition that I no longer need to be a reporting company. And you know what? It hasn't happened yet, but the SEC should say yes. Because you know what? If they're not securities, why are you reporting? Everyone get that last part? If you didn't, catch me right after, because I'm out of time, and enjoy your lunch. Thank you.